Maganda, welcome to the channel. My name is Mark, and for this video, we'll be reacting to another requested reaction, and this would be for the video Geography Now Indonesia. It was requested after I reacted to Geography Now India. So let's go ahead and check another country and see what other things we will know about it. I don't have a lot of information regarding Indonesia. So I think I'll be learning a lot on this video. So let's just go ahead and start watching.
Everybody, so if you don't know anything about Indonesia, basically all you have to know is that it's kind of like the Hawaii of the Muslim world, but it's like huge. It's like the biggest state, and with orangutans. And that's it, just no punchline. Let's just go to the intro song.
Ooh.
You saw. Hey everybody, I'm your host Barbie. So as some of you know, I've been to Indonesia one time on one island for like 3 hours. I ate one dish, so basically I'm like the Indonesia expert, right? Well, if not, I'm kind of like the only guy on YouTube doing full profile videos like this. So for now, you'll just have to kind of deal with me for like the next 12 or so minutes. Woohoo! Default! Alright, so again, if you don't know anything about Indonesia, it's basically like if the Middle East and South Asia had an incredibly colorful, loud, somewhat explosive set of babies, like thousands of them. Okay, that doesn't really help. First of all, Indonesia is the world's largest archipelago nation, located right where the Indian Ocean meets the Pacific Ocean. On the incredibly clustered set of islands, making 6 countries known commonly as Nusantara, or the Malay Archipelago. Indonesian Archipelago. Sure, whatever makes you happy. Indonesia actually has land borders with 3 of these countries, East Timor, Papua New Guinea, and Malaysia, on the biggest island, Borneo, or Kalimantan, which is one of the world's only 2 triple split nation islands, the other one being Cyprus. Although technically, if you include the UN buffer zone, it's kind of like 4 entities, but the UN isn't a country, whatever, just watch the Cyprus episode. The country is divided into 34 provinces, 5 of which have special
provinces, not states.
The capital and most populous city, Jakarta, located on Java, the world's most populous island with nearly half of the entire population of Indonesia in it. The largest cities after Jakarta
maybe
are
because
Surabaya
it's like,
and Bandung,
I think their capital or
Java
something.
Island, and Medan, located on Sumatra. Jakarta Soekarno Hatta International, Bali's Ngurah Rai International in Denpasar, and Surabaya's Juanda International. Now here's where things get a little speculative. Today there are still arguments claimed as to exactly how many islands Indonesia has. The National Coordinating Agency for Surveying and
13,500.
The National Institute of Aeronautics and Space Agency says that it has about 18,300, whereas the Indonesian government claims about 17,500. But wherever the point is, there's a lot of them. Over 8,800 have names, and over 900 of them are permanently inhabited. You would think they are the country with the most islands, but surprisingly, Finland and Canada beat them. But a lot of their islands are kind of like boop-a-doop, little islands in the lakes. So does it really count? I guess. Now let's talk about the 5 special administrative.
I have to pause because Canada and Finland is something that I would think as like one like island, or like one big, you know, like land, not an archipelago though. Ooh, that's new. Like that's something new for me, that they're actually like counting islands there.
Provinces. They are Aceh, Yogyakarta, West Papua, and the capital Jakarta. Now, no surprise,
yeah,
the capital Jakarta acts as its own political entity. Lots of countries do that. But what about the others? First, Aceh. Aceh is kind of like the black sheep of Indonesia. It's the only province in which Sharia law is fully implemented. Also, they kind of have like a ton of oil, so yeah, they've kind of asserted a very independent ideology that sets them apart as autonomous from the rest of Indonesia. Then you have Yogyakarta, which is the only region that is still governed by a pre-colonial monarchy. The Sultan of Yogyakarta acts as a hereditary governor. Otherwise, we get the 2 Papuas, which collectively used to be the province called Irian Jaya, but then in 2003 they got split into 2. Basically, this is the place that has the least in common with the rest of Indonesia. It has a culture and background closer to their cousins across the border in Papua.
Because they're like
why is this part of Indonesia? Well, long story short, Indonesia was basically
one island.
Well, now that we have our full sovereignty, we get everything that the Dutch colonized. But the people of Papua were not too happy, so then Indonesia was like, all right, we'll give you a vote to stay or leave. However, we would strongly implore you to make the right decision. So they voted to stay in. A lot of people complained. There's still some current opposition, and to this day, the area has a relatively high level of autonomy, and the government kind of just leaves them alone, except for when it comes to mining for resources. The South Maluku area also kind of has like an independence dispute thing kind of going on, but the major opponents to the Indonesian government are primarily based in the Netherlands. Then you have the strange Riau Islands, which look like they should belong to Malaysia, but they don't, even though they have a strong Malay-derived culture. Then you have the Ambalat Sea Block, which has a ton of oil that both they and Malaysia argue over. So that essentially covers most of the administrative administrative divisions of Indonesia. Some of the most notable spots of interest in Indonesia might include the National Monument and Museum, Royal Keraton Ngayogyakarta Palace, Ratu
Okay.
Boko, the Magelang and chicken-shaped churches, Borobudur, disputed to be the
That
largest
is
Buddhist temple in the world.
Borobudur is like, I think, popular. I think I've seen it somewhere, like in a video or something. Borobudur, and Borobudur is a name that I kind of like remember.
Imum Palace, the Taman Sari Underground Mosque.
Oh, this is a famous like Instagram photo area, I think. I don't know if that's a different place, but I think this is the one.
The Equator Monument, the Pura Ulun Danu Bratan Lake Temples. Yeah,
That one as well.
Pura Ulun Danu
Puro Ulun,
the Millennium Bridge, the Sacred Monkey Temple, the Hell
That
Mouth
I
or
know.
Elephant Cave, the 7-story pagoda of Cebu, the smoked mummy villages of
That I know, I
Benkin and
think.
Jiwika in Papua. Or if you're lazy, you can
I
just
don't
go
know
to the
about that.
Taman Mini Indonesia Indah Park, which kind of has like a bunch of replicas of all the famed sites in Indonesia. Oh, and keep in mind, there's Dutch colonial style buildings all over, too many ancient temples and pagodas to list. But no matter how many buildings and landmarks are built, they will never compare to what Mother Nature has done. Which brings us to...
Physical geography.
Bringing your ideas and innovations to the world means solving a lot of problems.
Indonesia's land is like that one ex we all had back in our 20s that we trusted a stupid friend to hook us up with. Super attractive, but almost killed you a few times. Indonesia lies on what is labeled as the prehistoric continental shelf known as Sundaland, which during the Ice Age times pretty much connected all of the islands together before the Wallace Line until the ice melted and filled in the gaps. Now this is where things get incredibly messed up. Not only is Indonesia right in the worst part of the Ring of Fire, but the country is basically smashed between 3 converging major continental plates. The Eurasian, the Pacific, and the Australian plates, with dozens of minor plates and rifts like the Sunda, Timor, Banda, Molucca, and so on.
Like
This in return
earthquakes.
gives Indonesia over 400 volcanoes, disputably more than any in the world, with over 150 active ones, making it the most volcanically active country in the world as well. This means on a daily
That's
basis,
scary.
Indonesia experiences on average about 4
As I've said,
a
earthquakes
day,
because of
ranging
the
anywhere
plates.
between the small, timid 3 to a noticeable 6 on the Richter scale. And you never know where or when they will happen. Impressive. Nonetheless, volcanoes can be a good thing, especially when concentrated close to the equator, as the warmer, humid climate allows moisture and minerals to coalesce, creating some of the most fertile land on the planet. This is
That's
why
what I'm
places
about
like
to
Hawaii
say.
and Iceland are so radically different despite both being volcanic islands. In the end, Indonesia got blessed with a flourishing abundance of flora and fauna, the second highest concentration in the world after Brazil, many of which being endemic species like the
Rafflesia, the big flower.
Arnoldi and the Titan arum, the largest flowers in the world, which each smell like rotting corpses. And at over 180, they also have the highest concentration of mammals out of anywhere in the world. Nonetheless, the national animal is actually a reptile, the
Komodo
largest in the
dragon.
world at 3 meters long, the famous Komodo dragon, which you can find a bunch of on Komodo Island, which is where they get their name from. And they can
I think I've seen a video about like Komodo dragon, like in Komodo Island, and I think I've also seen a blog where it was like a resort or a hotel, and there's actually like a Komodo dragon like in front of their like door in the hotel. Like live one, just passing by.
kill people. Just a heads up. And the surprisingly not national animal, even though everybody knows and loves them,
Orangutans.
the only great ape in Asia, orangutans, are only found on this archipelago as well. By the way, they look docile and quiet, but orangutans can rip off your arm if you anger them.
That
So
I've heard
don't.
of.
Otherwise, the largest mountain, Puncak Jaya, is located in the east in Papua.
Jaya.
The longest river, the Kapuas, flows on Kalimantan, or Borneo Island, starting in the east, emptying into the South China Sea.
Kapuas.
The largest lake, as well as the largest volcanic lake in the world, Lake Toba, can be found on Sumatra. This is also the site of the largest speculated volcanic explosive eruption on Earth that essentially created a worldwide volcanic winter. The eruption was so big that you can literally observe ashes from the explosion that went as far as Malawi in East Africa. Remember, guys, Mother Nature is beautiful, but if she wants, she can kill.
That is
Close
true.
to Puncak Jaya is Grasberg, the largest gold and copper mine in the world. And on Mount Ijen on Java, which spews out blue lava, all over you can find intrepid sulfur miners that literally go into the base of the volcanic craters, risking health just to get raw sulfur ores. Otherwise, you have other anomalies like the Sidoarjo mud volcanoes, the 3-colored lake Kelimutu in Flores, and the Kakaban Island jellyfish lake. Too many strange places. To this day, Indonesia is the number 1 producer of palm oil, cloves, cinnamon, nutmeg, coconut, and vanilla. Some national dishes might include things like rendang, satay, or
Satay.
gado-gado,
I think I've heard.
ketupat, papeda, ikan
Wait.
bakar,
I'm just gonna go back to the gadu gadu.
cloves,
Wait.
cinnamon, nutmeg, coconut, and vanilla. Some national dishes might include things like rendang, satay, or satay, gado-gado.
Okay. Because it seems like it's like A chowking meal.
Lontong, ketupat, papeda, ikan bakar, pempek, tumpeng, lemang, and the national dish nasi goreng, which
Nasi
basically just means
goreng,
fried
yes.
rice, which has no exact recipe. You can mix it up and kind of do whatever you want to it. Oh, and keep in mind, Malaysia might argue that some of these dishes belong to them, but that's a whole other story tied in with history and culture. We got time. Why not talk about it?
Oh.
Now, there's a lot of
Demographics.
curious mysteries when it comes to Indonesia's people. Like, how did they become predominantly Muslim? Or what's the whole deal with them in Malaysia? Or wait, this guy is considered an Indonesian? What? First of all, the country has about 263 million people, making it the fourth most populous country in the world, with the largest population of Muslims as well. Now, here's the thing. In a sense, yes, 95% of the population is considered native Indonesian, but that's an incredibly broad term considering that Indonesia has about 300 different ethno-linguistic groups split up across all the island regions of the country. If you look at a map with the actual ethnic group breakdown, it kind of looks something like this. Nonetheless, the two largest parent ethnic groups are the Javanese that make up
There's
about
like a
40%,
mixture of a lot of, like,
Sundanese that make up about 15%.
groups
Otherwise, the rest of the population
from
is
other
primarily
countries.
made up of smaller groups and tribes that have only around 2 to 3% each, like the Batak, the Sulawesi, the Balinese, Minangkabau, Betawi, Papuan, Dayak, and so on. Finally, about 5% are non-indigenous Indonesians like Chinese, Arabs, Indians, and even a few Europeans. They also use the Indonesian rupiah as their currency, they use the Type-C plug outlet, and they drive on the left side of the road. And here's where things get a little confusing. Culture and language. The one thing that kind of unites all Indonesians is that they share the national
Bahasa
language,
Indonesia, which is like Tagalog.
the Indonesian language. However,
when it
Bahasa
comes to, like, you know,
Indonesia is
reading
actually
and
kind of like
writing.
a lingua franca to many of the people, as Indonesia is the world's largest trilingual country. In addition to Bahasa Indonesia, most people speak their own mother tongue as well as English. Yep, English. They caught on quick when they realized it was the money language. The funny thing is, even though the Javanese make up the largest people group, the Javanese language is not an official language. Technically, it could have been, but then that would have favored one people group over all the others, which would have caused tension, so they kind of had to choose like a neutral default. Plus, Javanese is like really hard to learn, and the original writing system, although very beautiful, is incredibly difficult to write. Nonetheless, at nearly 100 million speakers, this makes Javanese the largest non-official minority language in the world. And that's why the Bahasa Indonesia language is so strange. It's not even technically indigenous to Indonesia, but more Malay-derived. To this day, people who speak Bahasa Indonesia can understand somewhere around 60 to 70% of what their neighbors are saying in Malaysia. The biggest difference, though, would be the loanwords, as Indonesia took quite a bit of influence from the Dutch back in colonial times. For example, kantor versus kantor.
Wait.
Took quite a bit of influence from the Dutch back in colonial times. For example, kantor versus kantor. Doctor versus doctor.
Okay, so it's like in the Philippines, like in the Filipino language, is also like kind of like getting influenced by other languages from other countries that basically colonized the country. We have like Spanish language, we have the English, because in Filipino, when you say doctor, we have a term for that. That's like manggagamot. Pero when you say doctor, you can also translate that into like Tagalog in doctor, which is basically just D-O, instead of the D-O-C-T-O-R, it's D-O-K-T-O-R. There's also that. And by the way, mantel in I don't know if it's in, because I'm Bisaya, I'm not Tagalog. Mantel in Bisaya is actually the table covering. Put it like what you cover the table. It's like the plastic sheet that you cover the table with. This is mantel.
Mantel, oma, opa, vortel, wortel, doctor versus doctor. Mantel, oma.
This is Korean, like, right? Uma and opa.
Opa, vortel, wortel. Speaking of the Dutch, quick history lesson. Hindu kingdoms, Buddhist kingdoms, Islamic kingdoms. The Portuguese come in quickly, but then the Dutch flock in. Japan comes in for a couple of years and decimates a huge chunk of the population. Independence, Republic, the Suharto years. Controversial incidents and fights with ethnic Chinese, Timorese, and Papuan peoples. Suharto falls, Reformation period begins, and here we are today. In Indonesia, all citizens are required to register under one of 6 recognized religion categories: Islam, Protestant, Catholic, Hindu, Buddhist, and Confucianism. If you don't identify with either, then sorry. Prior to Islam entering around the 13th
So basically it's based on religion. Oh, okay.
century, Indonesia was actually primarily Hindu and Buddhist. It's disputed on how exactly Indonesia became prevalently Muslim. Some people will say that it's because of the Arab traders that came by in the early first millennium. Others will say that maybe it had to do with the Malacca Sultanate conquest that fought against the Hindu and Buddhist kingdoms.
Okay, I just remembered something like in the history of the Philippines. I'm not sure about this info though. Like I'm just trying to remember from memory. That if you look at the map right now, we can see the map. This one, like Mindanao is basically what in the Philippines is like predominantly Muslims is in Mindanao, and they're close to Indonesia. So, and also in history, it seems like Muslim from Mindanao was actually from Borneo. So that kind of like I think also from Indonesia in some way, I think. But yeah, the this I think this kind of like area here, Indonesia, and then Mindanao part, kind of like Muslims. I think that like the predominant religion is Muslim.
And the truth is, both might be right. Inevitably, Bali became like the last sort of haven for whatever Hindus were left. The eastern Nusa Tenggara region and the Papuas remained predominantly Christian as the Dutch and Portuguese shared the gospel. Islamic culture in Indonesia is a little different from what it looks like in the Middle East. For one, most mosques don't have the typical dome structure, and actually many of them resemble Hindu temples, like the Demak Great Mosque. When a family member dies, their relatives might often come together and pray for a whole week, and then again on the 40th day, and then on the year anniversary, and then on the 500th day, and so on. Also, the night before Eid al-Fitr, the youth might gather and go around neighborhoods reciting the takbir. Those are some things you don't really typically find in the Middle East. Clothing modesty customs are pretty loose. Not all Muslim women wear hijabs, however, the ones that do might also complement it with Western clothing, like branded t-shirts with skin-tight sleeves and jeans. When I was in Indonesia, I saw a hijab-wearing woman with short sleeves and capri pants exposing her calves. I was like, can they do that? Now, in terms of culture,
like
again, it depends
Muslim,
on where you
but
are, and many indigenous people
modernized in somehow?
traditions. Everything from the Minangkabau candle dance to the gamelan players of Yogyakarta, Wayang Javanese shadow puppetry, Balinese festivals, Sumatran pencak silat martial art tournaments, Kenya motif paintings of the Kalimantan tribes, the deadly pasola game played by Sumba peoples, Karbeng cow racing on Madura Island, the strange burial traditions of the Toraja people, and everywhere you can find those pointy longhouses.
That
Otherwise, some notable people of Indonesian
I
descent
kind of
might
like
include people
know
like
about
First
Indonesia.
President Sukarno, Gadamaja, R.A. Kartini, B.J. Habibi, Iko Uwais, Yayan Nuruhian, Sesep Arif Rahman, Agnes Monica, Iwan Faz, Anggun, Megawati Sukarno Putri,
Anggun, I know
Hartono
Anggun.
brothers, and YouTubers Brian Emanuel and Raditya Dika. Now, it's so hard to cover Indonesia's culture because there's so many different people groups, each with their own cultures. It's insanely colorful and rich. I wish we could cover more, but we gotta move on to some diplomatics, shall we?
Friendzone.
Okay, so Indonesia is basically like the kingpin of Southeast Asia with the largest population and economy, as well as being a member of the G20. Therefore, they know how to
G20
manage
summit?
relations. First of all, the rest of the Muslim nations in the Middle East generally get along with Indonesia as they see them as kind of like their strange Asian cousins. Indonesians make up the largest group of pilgrims for the Hajj in Mecca. However, there has been some controversy with Saudi Arabia in regards to migrant worker abuse and death sentences. Since then, Indonesia dramatically decreased its expat programs. The US, the Netherlands, and Australia are kind of like their biggest non-Asian supporters. In addition to trade and business, the US played a huge role in Indonesia's independence, and they worked closely during Cold War times. The Netherlands still holds close ties to Indonesia despite post-colonial bitterness. Plus, tons of Indonesians live in the Netherlands. To this day, they have the second largest population of Indonesians outside of Indonesia after Malaysia at nearly 2 million. Australia gives some of the most aid to Indonesia, especially after catastrophe incidents. And even though there are some controversies involving immigration and attacks on Australians abroad, they still share close ties generally. Now, Indonesia and Malaysia are kind of like the Colombia and Venezuela of Southeast Asia. They're like the twins separated at birth and have a
They're like the
strange
same,
love-hate relationship.
you know.
Malays accuse Indonesians of stealing their culture and language. Indonesians accuse them of not being grateful for all their help during war times. But when they actually meet up as people, it's like they're totally brothers. Nonetheless, most Indonesians I talk to have said Japan is probably their best friend, which is funny because Japan kind of really messed things up during World War II. Nonetheless, they've moved on, and today Japan makes up the largest export partner. Tourists flock in year-round, and the two have been building each other up for over half a century. In conclusion, Indonesia's people are very much like their islands, numerous with lush, colorful, strange diversity.
like-
Sometimes a cyclone, earthquake, or volcano of controversy erupts, but at the end of the day, they still flourish together as one. Stay tuned, Iran is coming up next.
What was it? Is like Indonesia is kind of like diverse, but like on a higher level. Alright guys, so that's our reaction to Geography Now Indonesia. So in summary, with what I understand and what I've learned about the video is that it varies. It's sort of like based on the videos that I've watched, it's more of like India, but separated physically. So it creates more of like a lot of different cultures or like customs and things like that. So yeah, that's what it. I only knew a few like things about Indonesia, so this is a nice intro to that. And the most interesting thing that I know is about like the way that how different Muslims in Indonesia are to the Muslims in the Middle East. Because for me, like Muslims in kind of way is like their religion. I think as all religions actually are kind of like uh strict when it comes to like their beliefs and things like that, but more strict than Catholics and Christians when it comes to belief. But in Indonesia it's more of like there's a mix of other religion, kind of like that's what I kind of like see. But yeah, I think that's it for this video. If you do like the video, please don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet, follow me on my social media, and don't forget to click the notification bell so that you'll get updated whenever I upload the next video. Thanks again for watching. Hanggang sa susunod na kita. Amping lang kanunay.